good morning. Today, we are discussing metformin, a molecule that has stood the test of time and remains the foundational pillar of type 2 diabetes management. Despite the recent excitement surrounding newer agents like SGLT2 inhibitors and GLP-1 receptor agonists, metformin maintains its status as the first-line therapy for most patients. Our goal today is to look beyond its ability to lower hemoglobin A1C and understand the clinical nuances that ensure patient adherence and safety. When we prescribe metformin, we are primarily targeting the liver. By subtly interfering with mitochondrial energy production, metformin forces the liver to reduce its output of glucose, a process known as gluconeogenesis. This is particularly vital in managing fasting hyperglycemia. Furthermore, it enhances the sensitivity of muscle tissue to the insulin already present in the body. It is important to remind our patients that metformin is not an insulin provider, but an insulin facilitator. Because it does not force the pancreas to secrete more insulin, the risk of a patient experiencing a hypoglycemic event while on metformin monotherapy is virtually non-existent. This safety profile is why we feel comfortable starting it in various clinical settings. The most significant barrier to metformin therapy is not its toxicity, but its tolerability. Approximately 20 to 30% of patients experience gastrointestinal distress, including nausea, bloating, or osmotic diarrhea. In clinical practice, the start low, go slow mantra is not just a suggestion, it is a necessity for long-term adherence. I always recommend starting with 500 milligrams once daily with the largest meal of the day. If the patient tolerates this for a week, we then move to twice daily. For those who remain sensitive, the extended release or XR formulation is a clinical lifesaver. By using a polymer matrix to release the drug slowly, we can often bypass the local irritation in the upper gut that causes these side effects. We must address the most significant black box warning associated with metformin: lactic acidosis. Historically, we were very conservative with renal function, but current guidelines have loosened significantly. We now use the estimated glomerular filtration rate rather than serum creatinine alone. As long as a patient's eGFR remains above 30, metformin is generally considered safe, though we reduce the dose when the rate falls below 45. The concern arises during acute physiological stress, such as severe dehydration, sepsis, or the administration of intravenous iodinated contrast. In these scenarios, the risk of acute kidney injury can lead to metformin accumulation and subsequent lactic acidosis. Therefore, we advise patients to temporarily withhold their medication if they are unable to maintain oral hydration or are scheduled for major surgery. Metformin is associated with an increased risk of vitamin B12 deficiency, especially at higher doses and with prolonged use. Periodic monitoring of vitamin B12 levels should be considered in patients receiving long-term metformin therapy. Finally, we should consider the pleiotropic effects of this drug. We see metformin used increasingly in the management of polycystic ovary syndrome to restore menstrual regularity and in prediabetic patients to delay the onset of overt diabetes. Perhaps most interestingly, recent observational data suggests that metformin may have cardioprotective and even anti-neoplastic properties, potentially reducing the risk of certain cancers. While we wait for more robust clinical trial data on its role in longevity, it is clear that metformin is much more than a simple sugar pill. It is a sophisticated metabolic modulator that, when used correctly, provides a lifetime of benefit with minimal cost. Thank you for your attention. Please let me know if you have any questions.